Okay, while he's making a number of different copies, let me just give you some background as to what we're going to talk about this Tisha B'Av. We began by speaking last night by how a person responds to tragedy. Of course, tragedy we discussed on two different levels. First, on the level of communal collective as well as private individual. Those are two issues that a person has to face. And of course, we are going to say that both of these have to be approached with both the same categories of Torah mitzvot as well as different ones. And at a certain point, one has to see where there's an overlap. Where is it appropriate to approach individual, personal, private tragedies with the sources of Torah mitzvot, and where one has to create almost a new approach to any kind of personal tragedy that takes place, or communal collective. One always raises the question whether or not there's a point where our traditional sources do not simply fill what the individual actually needs, or what the collective Am Yisrael actually needs. We spoke about, as you know, last night, this morning, 7 basic communal crises took place with Jewish people. We began with 722, fourth common year, the exile of the 10 northern tribes, 586 Churban Bayit Rishon, 7th common year, Churban Bayit Sheni, the Bar Kokhba revolt, which it was 132 to 135. Then we had Girush Sefarad. Then we had Gevzot Tahmatach Military pogroms, and then the Holocaust. 7 basic national crises, tragedies. And I defined these with a 3/4-fold criteria. First of all, there had to be massive destruction, number one. Number two, there had to be geographic dislocation, where there's some kind of physical movement, because that in itself also affects people. Geographic dislocation. Third, there had to be a change in the self-perception of the Jewish people, how they view themselves as a result of this crisis and tragedy. And fourth, we said that there was a rabbinic response. The rabbis had a need to address the issue of national crisis of Jewish people. Those were the ways that I chose my 7. And as I mentioned on both occasions, these are not hard and fast, but I think that covers the 7 crises that we're speaking about. And of course we spoke about how the first person to address crisis on a national level, namely Amos, that was last night, how did Amos deal with this crisis? All of a sudden, for the first time in Jewish history, you have an overwhelming tragedy. You have Galut Yud Shevatim. 10, 12 Jewish people have been affected, impacted upon by this horrible devastation. What does he say? The role of the rabbi we defined as threefold. First of all, the rabbi has to comfort. Second, has to inspire. Inspire to go on living for some reason. And third of all, the rabbi slash Navi slash rabbi has to, at a certain point, place the entire historical event in some kind of theological framework, trying to make sense of it. And I wasn't willing to define very carefully my categories. At what point was Amos comforting? At what point was Amos inspiring? At what point was Amos theologizing? What point is he saying, this is a new theological model through which we now look at our crisis? We then look at Yirmiyahu. Yirmiyahu also, in 5 and 6, had to confront a massive crisis. Here you have Churban Bayit Rishon. This is amazing. It's overwhelming. Impossible to happen. Those who know Yirmiyahu Perek Zayin would know that it was viewed as theologically blasphemous. It was apikorsut. It was heresy to predict that Beit HaMikdash would be destroyed. That's something that could not happen. Impossible to happen. Never happened. You said it's got to happen, you deserve to die. And of course, not only Perek Zayin was Yirmiyahu, but also in the 29th chapter, if I remember correctly, of Yirmiyahu, Yirmiyahu was put on trial. He was actually put on trial for predicting this. Don't look at the sources, please, till I get there. Listen to me first. Yirmiyahu, of course, put on trial because how dare you predict there's going to be Churban Bayit Rishon? Impossible. Parenthetically, in 1976, I believe it was, a very close friend of mine, 78, wrote an article for Tradition saying, could the Jewish people survive destruction of Israel? Could the Jewish people survive destruction of Medina Israel? Could it happen? Would we survive it? Article was written by a Harvard lawyer. He was a friend of mine who was going to Harvard Law School at the time. We were in Boston together. And he was roundly criticized, devastated, condemned, and destroyed by the letters to the editor. How dare you publish an article of such blasphemy? How dare you say that it's possible for Jewish people to survive the, God forbid, the destruction of the state of Israel. And he responded to all the letters. At stake over here was a very critical, important point. Whether or not Israel is on the table or not on the table. For all the rabbis that responded to the article, Israel is not even item to discuss. We can't even think or talk about the possibility of Israel, God forbid, being destroyed. Gary's approach was, 1 second. This may happen. You're surrounded by 100 million Arabs. This may happen. We have to talk about it. And what's more important? Non-discussion of the issue of destruction? Or, let's see, are the Jewish people and survival of Jewish people more important? How do you weigh these two? And Gary was trying to say, how are we going to deal with this, God forbid, potential scenario? So now, you're a rabbi, you're in 722, your name is Amos, you have to now comfort, inspire, and perhaps provide a new theological model. You're Yirmiyahu now, 586 before the Common Era. 586 before the Common Era. Now, same issue. You have the obligation of what? Number 1, comforting the Jewish people. Number 2, inspiring them to continue to live. And 3, try to make sense where Hashem himself would destroy Bnei Mikdash. It was viewed, again, in that period of time, as heretical to even mention the possibility. And of course, as you know, Yirmiyahu, Nevi'eh Sheker said, Shalom, there's peace, there's no peace. Ve'en Shalom. You mentioned there's no Shalom, basically there's Shalom. And the poor people had to now deal with the issue, whom do we believe? Yirmiyahu said, Kishelo yeh bayit hazeh, that this place will be like Shiloh, which means it will be destroyed. Or those Nevi'eh Sheker said, no problem, it's Shalom. And the trial, he of course painfully went through this incredible trial, and at the end, he's exonerated, but they were all going to kill him, and he was whisked away and his life was saved. Yirmiyahu was there providing a new theological model, saying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was willing to do what? Why? What's more important? The nation or the covenant for the nation. The berit between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people was more important than even Beit HaMikdash. Nobody believed it. Remember, at that point in time, Beit HaMikdash had stood from the year, Shlomo HaMelech, 960 before the Common Era, built from 960 to 953, all the way to 586. People believed in the eternity of Beit HaMikdash. It can never be destroyed, no matter what we do as individuals. The covenant is second place to Beit HaMikdash. Yirmiyahu had to provide a new theological model by which to understand Judaism and Jewish self-perception. Good. Then, 70 after the Common Era, once again the Jewish people are faced with a massive destruction. How do you respond to massive destruction? So we had seen the Gemara Bava Batra, Daf Samach Amud Bet, how the Pirushim, this morning we had seen, how the Pirushim had approached this destruction. And their answer was, we're not going to eat meat, we're not going to drink wine. And Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanina says, impossible. You can't do this. There'll be no Jewish people left. You want to drink water? Can't drink water. There's no more Mayim Al HaMizbeach. You want to eat fruit? You can't because there's no Peru Bikurim any longer. So he then has to, and again, provide one of 3 models. Comfort, inspire, and perhaps provide a new theological model as to understand where HaKadosh Baruch Hu would destroy Bnei Mikdash again. Take note that many Jews decided the covenant was over. After Horban Bayit Sheni, they said, impossible, couldn't be, the covenant is over, and now there's a new covenant, which is what's it called, the new covenant? Christianity. And of course you know that the Christians, found wonderful sources in the Torah itself to prove Christianity. What's the Hebrew word for New Testament? What's the source of that word? Yeah, exactly. Chapter 32, 31 and 32. Brit Hadashah, New Testament. So they quoted Yirmiyahu himself in that particular issue, Judeo-Christians saying that really the Brit Hadashah over here. And what's horrifying and shocking is that many Jews bought it then as, fill in the statement as, many Jews buying it today. Last article I read, there are 100,000 Judeo-Christians. When we were involved in college, 25 or 30 years ago, and we were involved in missionary busting and going into the churches and the synagogues and all that, trying to bring Jews back, it wasn't such a threat or a crisis. It was college campuses. We went to a couple of college campuses, we combated their literature, we explained to them where they were wrong. I recall a session with Michael Wishagrog and David Berger, all who are great intellectuals, trying to combat Judeo-Christianizing. And yet to think at that point there was a couple of thousand people. What were there? 5, 10, 15, 20 synagogues, churches, call them. Now you have, what's the number? It's in one of the articles. Maybe 100 you have. 100 places that are now missionizing for Judaism to turn them into Christians. The argument is, you no longer have to convert to become Christian. Really, stay Jewish, become Judeo-Christian, and that's the fulfillment of the covenant. So the Christians then and now, it's 2,000 years later, said what? It's easy to fulfill God's promise to you. All you have to do is become believer in Yeshua. Don't convert. For 2,000 years the Christian movement tried to convert Jews. Now they're saying, don't convert Jews, stay Jewish. Accept Yeshua, and you'll be good. Now, let's assume their numbers are really exaggerated. The Times reported 100,000. Let's say it's 50,000. It's astounding. 50,000 Jews believe in Yeshua. What's more astounding is I know two of them. One is a 75-year-old grandmother who's a Jew for Jesus. She accepted Yeshua, for whatever reasons her were. She says, I believe in him. Now it's 15 years. Shocking to me. What Syrian woman, grandmother, wants to believe in Yeshua? She does. And one was a young man, Syrian person, who grew up in the Syrian community that for some reason became, I can't figure it out, of course he had no religion on his own, that goes without saying, and became a Jew for Yeshua, and married one, a Jewish girl who was also a believer, and they now happily married 15, 16, 17 years later. It's astounding. The third person that I know is an Ashkenazic person, not Syrian, Ashkenazic person, grew up on East 7th, between J and K, that I played basketball with, Mark Savage, lovely guy. He became convinced, Reformed Jew, no real Judaism, all that we don't understand. He became convinced of that message. The amazing thing is that is a message of, of 2,000 years ago. Still involved. It's amazing. So the question is, how do we now understand Chorban Bayit Sheni? We discussed it this morning, yeah. It's a hard question. It's a very complex phenomenon. We're not going to speak about right now. Cults in general are very complex. What they provide for an average person. When they do it in Israel, which Yad L'Achim tries to combat, and going back 20, 30 years ago, we did by, I think it was called Pe'ilim in those days, Pe'ilim. They were taking poor immigrant Jews and giving them food, and giving them clothing, and giving them a place to stay. That's different. These are average people. These are normal people, in quotes, that are converted by the message of Christianity to the world. So yes, I'd like to believe it's because they didn't have a strong Jewish foundation. That's probably true. But my daughter was telling me 2 days ago, she met one on college campus and arguing with them. She's arguing with them. Like, that's the kind of kid she is. She's going to argue with them and try to see how foolish they are. And she knows Tanakh well enough to do so. Most Jews do not. So it's a complex phenomenon as to the reasons why a person would do so, would become a Jew for Yeshua. But 2,000 years ago it was easy. Why was it easy? Because you had Chorban Beit HaMikdash. That proved Christianity. Right. So if one wants to raise the issue of Christianity in the Holocaust, as mentioned this morning, Christianity viewed the Holocaust as theologically correct. Meaning that Christianity had said all along for 2,000 years, if you reject Yeshua, what's going to happen to you? So it made sense to them. Which is why the chief rabbi of Italy converted to Christianity. Pashut, simple. Which is also the reason why Pope Pius XII said nothing, which you mentioned again this morning, not to repeat all that information. So the issue over here is that the rabbinic leadership has an obligation of providing comfort, inspiration, and a new theological model to explain, to absorb this crisis, this tragedy. What do we do now? In Bava Batra talked about some of the religious responses, some of the rabbinic responses. Bava Batra Daf Sameh. What do we do? And again, you have to determine each statement whether it was comfort, inspiration, or a new theological model to combat the old theological model. Christianity had a new theological model. What was this theological model? Covenant's over, new covenant, let's be Christians. Some Jews opted that way. Perushim said what they said. Different theological models. What I want to approach now is Rabbi Soloveitchik's classic work called Judofek, who is responding to the Holocaust. One should study all of the terrible disasters and tragedies that had befallen the Jewish people. We have an obligation of understanding and knowing all about this. whether it's Yud Shivatim, Beit Rishon, Beit Sheni, Bar Kochva revolt, which failed and which was a horrible disaster to the Jewish people, or Girush Sefarad, or Chaminiki pogroms, or the Holocaust. We have an obligation of trying to understand the phenomenon. We have to use our biblical and rabbinic sources, absolutely. And then we have to think about whether or not there's a need for a new paradigm, a new theological model. And as we read through Rabbi Soloveitchik's article, we won't finish it, of course, here, but this in and of itself has to be challenged. Raise the question. What is Rabbi Soloveitchik doing over here? Is he comforting? Is he inspiring? Is he providing a new theological model by which to understand this terrible Horban, this terrible devastation that had befallen the Jewish people? And again, I wasn't easy. This morning, Emily very easily wanted to say, well, Yirmiyahu was a new theological model. I'm not so quick to point to new theological models. I could see Yirmiyahu as having provided, rather, comfort/inspiration. Not a new theological model. She said, no, maybe it really is. Especially in terms of Megillat Echa. Tavalta v'hamalta, and that entire Perek Gimel, what was Yirmiyahu trying to do at that point in time? Comfort, inspire, or provide a new theological model. That's something that has to be thought about very carefully before you come to any firm conclusions. So too the question should be raised with Kol Dodi Dofek. I think it's a brilliant work. I think it's extraordinarily comforting. I think it's overwhelmingly inspiring. And I think that the question has to be raised, is Rabbi Soloveitchik saying something new theologically? Or is it simply biblical rabbinic sources that he's not trying to create a new theological model? Those who read the essay, anybody have read it here? Okay, what do you think? Is it a new theological model, or is it, you should read it again then.
No, I don't remember.
Oh, you remember such. Okay, Ezra, what do you think? How should we respond to it? Okay, what are the key terms of research? We'll see in a minute. I just want to just give you a kind of introduction. What are the key terms? I believe this is a new theological model. But I'm willing to stand corrected on that. Yeah, Michael? Correct. What is he saying with those two terms? What does Yehud mean? What does Goral mean? Take, F-A-T-E, good. Overwhelm him. What does the word Yehud literally mean? Destiny, correct. But what does destiny mean? That which you can shape on your own, despite whatever fate has written against it. Good. So those are two key terms. Now, the same is true, let's just parenthetically make the point, on a individual manner. God forbid a person loses a parent, God forbid a person loses a child, whatever tragedies those may be. The rabbi's role in that particular context is the same. Inspire, comfort, inspire, and perhaps provide a theological understanding as to why this took place. And we have to be careful that we don't cross over our categories. When you're comforting, you're not theologizing. And you want to make sure that the person's asked, you have to understand the question the person's asking you. Why did this happen? Maybe a theological question, also might be simply a question, I need comfort. I need inspiration to go on with my life. I want you to provide me with that inspiration. You don't want to confuse your categories. Because it can be disastrous for that person who seeks out comfort and is given theology, and vice versa. A person who needs theology, understanding, framework, logic, and you give him some kind of comfort. It wouldn't work. So you understand the questions that are being asked you when you are the rabbi being asked this particular question. Is the person asking the question of comfort, inspiration, or theology? Okay, so we're going to leave the question as to whether this is new theology or not open. And as we go through it, of course we won't solve the question right now. We'll at least have on our table the possibility that it is something new theologically, or rather simply just biblical rabbinic sources put in a new way that provides comfort and inspiration, but nothing new theologically. Let's look at the opening paragraph. He begins by raising the most difficult of all questions that any rabbi has to face or had to face. What is that issue? What is that problem? What is that question that he has to worry about? Suffering. Not suffering per se, but rather theodicy. What does theodicy mean? What does the word theodicy mean? Theodicy literally means justification of God's ways. Justification of God's ways. That people suffer is an important discussion, but it's worse when it happens to a righteous person. Now I have to understand this. Now question, do the Nevi'im deal with theodicy? Absolutely. Correct. And if you looked at Yirmiyahu, let's say, he raised the question, Lama derech l'sha'im tzaleha? He can't figure it out. He's looking for a theological model to understand, to justify the suffering of a people who's going through destruction. Now, in that particular context of Yirmiyahu, I think it's Yud Bet, there's no answer to that question. Hashem simply tells him, I'm not going to solve this question for you. Just go ahead and do what you have to do and talk about destruction. I'm not going to solve the problem for you. Yirmiyahu. What other biblical book deals with theodicy? Iyov, of course, is an incredibly important book in this context. And I'll raise the question, does Iyov receive an explanation? Was he happy with the explanation? Yes. Now, important point. He, as an individual, experienced some kind of divine encounter which solved the problem theologically for him. Theologically for him. Right. Now, I'm not sure, in that case, if it really is a theological or a logical response. One has to study the 38th to 39th and 4th chapter of Iyov very carefully to see about his theological response, if in fact there was one. Iyov. Good. Theodicy is justification of God's ways. But it's not simply in these contexts. If you look, as we did last night, in Melachim Bet, chapter Yud Zayin, where there's a description of the destruction of the 10 northern tribes, Melachim Bet, we didn't do it last night, but just to point out the notion to you, in chapter 17, we have verse, I'm not going to go through it, so don't get it, I'm just going to read just 2 lines. In Melachim Bet, Yud Zayin, we have the first 8 verses describe Horban Shomron, 10 northern tribes. Then we have from Pasuk 7, for the rest of the chapter to 23, theodicy. The explanation as to why this took place. Simply, these people broke the covenant, they had to be punished for it. Here's one example. But throughout the entire prophetic literature, you're going to find theodicy. Justification of God's ways. If you sin, you'll be punished, and he tries to explain punishment for sin. That's one theological model. If you sin, you're punished. And that's very simple. It works. You sin, you're punished. Where did it work? Iyov. Iyov didn't work. Ish tam v'yashai rokim v'star merah. Nobody in Tanakh is described with a 4-fold adjectival description as being so wonderfully righteous. Nobody. Iyov is the epitome of righteousness. And he prays on top of everything else. He prays for his children, for everybody else. Shemahat ubanai. May my children have sinned, so I'm going to pray for them. Give me a korban for them. Yet, Iyov's model, the Navi's model, did not satisfy Iyov. Because what does Iyov say? I didn't sin. Why am I suffering? He needed a new theological model. Okay. So Rabbi Soloveitch is going to begin over here with the issue of Tzaddik V'Ralo, theodicy, justification of God's ways. He begins by telling us, Ahat ha'chidot hasatumot. I won't read everything, but let's just get a sense of his work. One of the hidden mysteries, Sheyahadut hitlabeta bahen, that Judaism has struggled with, B'shahar kiyuma, from the dawn of its existence, hu anyan hasevel ba'olam, the problem of suffering in the world. Now, I'm going to point out that for many rabbis, there is no problem of suffering in the world. They will simply make the conclusion that if a person is suffering, a person gets sick, he deserves it. That's a theological model that Tanakh seems to promote. However, the Gemara on Shabbat denies that. The Gemara Shabbat Daf Lamed Gimel, Amud Aleph, makes the point, Yesh Yisurim Belo Het, Yesh Mita Belo Avon. So that means there is suffering without transgression, and a person may even die not having sinned. So that theological model was shoved aside. The premise of the Gemara, the Hamid Gemara, is that and Mita Belo Yisurim. There's no death without affliction. If you are suffering, you sin. That's the premise. Then the Gemara challenges that. But there are 4 people who died without having sinned. So that theological model doesn't work any longer. So now we need a new theological model, Gemara on Shabbat. Not all, of course, would agree. Some would say simply, if you sin, if you're punished, therefore you sin. If you're suffering, you did a transgression. And there are many Gemarot which, of course, will, in fact, support that theological model. So let's begin on a very different note. It tells us over here that Judaism has struggled from the beginning, dawn of its existence, with the problem of suffering in the world. Adon HaNevi'im, it's whom? Moshe Rabbeinu, Kevar Hanen, La'adon HaKol. Moshe Rabbeinu had begged to the master of all. Who's the master of all? Borei Olam HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ve'et Ratzon, at a moment of divine willingness and kindness. At a moment when there was grace in the world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should enlighten his eyes. Halacha, in this, the law of this deepening, perplexing problem. Dafak Moshe al Sharei Shamayim. Moshe banged on the gates of heaven and he screamed, Hodi'eni na et derachecha. Show me your ways. I want to understand your ways. Now, of course, Rabbi Soloveitchik over here is quoting, as the footnote points out, Gemara and Berachot. We'll come to that in a moment. Harini na kivodecha. Show me your essence. Moshe asked for 2 distinct issues. One is the ways of God in the world, namely what? Tzaddik v'ra'alo. Also want to know about your essence. Madua v'lama yavo yisurim al ha'adam. Why does a person have to suffer afflictions? Madua v'lama yisbor ha'tzaddik v'tzliach harasha. Why, even perhaps more perplexing, does the righteous person suffer while the evil person is prosperous? Me'az boket bufle zeh. From that wondrous morning, kishaharu'aya ne'eman, namely, Moshe Rabbeinu, hityahed im boreh ha'olam, hityahed became one with the creator of the world, ubikesh pitaron. He sought out a solution to this question, to this all-encompassing, all-embracing, she'elah makif, the question of all questions. From that moment on, Heithabetu ba'nevi'im ve'achmei Yisrael b'shech kol hadorot. The prophets, as pointed out Yirmiyahu and others, ve'achmei Yisrael, and the rabbis of Israel, throughout all generations, trying to understand solution to this issue. Let's look for a minute below the star. The Shalom tells us, Ayem berachot hazayin amud aleph, Rabbi Meir says he was not answered this question. However, was there an answer? The Gemara says yes, there was an answer. Rabbi Yochanan answered the question. What is the answer in the Gemara and Berachot to this question? Why should a righteous man suffer? Answer: you have Tzaddik ben Rasha or Rasha ben Tzaddik. So the Gemara in Masechet Berachot tries to solve this issue with a new theological model, or perhaps better, the old theological model with a new twist to it, a new dimension to it. That you could be a wonderfully righteous person and yet suffer. And why are you suffering? Because you're a ben Rasha at some point along the chain. Right. Now, of course, can you challenge that theological model? What would you say to it? What would you say if you were experiencing a tragedy? Oh, you're suffering because your great-grandfather was... Sorry? Good. So where do we find that? The book of Devarim and Yehezkel, both places, we have a new notion, an interesting notion. As opposed to, I have now individual responsibility. Yehezkel, Yud Zayin, Yud Het, and the book of Devarim also says, Ish b'chato yomatu. Lo yom tuvanim alavot. Children should not die for their parents. Rather, Ish b'chato yomatu. Individual responsibility. Now, what is Yirmiyahu's take on that? What does he say about that issue? Avotenu hatiru ve'enam v'anachnu avotem savalnu. Now, is that a theological statement? What is Yirmiyahu saying over here? Our forefathers have sinned and they're no longer. We are suffering because of them. Is that comfort, inspiration, or theology? Well, we could discuss that issue. Not to go back to that. Sorry? It certainly is a complaint. Well, in one level, he's certainly explaining why God did this. But it's not so simple to simply put into his statement, well, he's saying we're not responsible. It's comforting that I'm suffering and it's not because of me. Let's say a person is suffering. What are one of his concerns? Did I sin? Why me? Did I sin? Is God angry with me? In a very famous Rabbi Joe Betesh A narrative, who as well is dealing with horrible, terrible suffering the Jewish people in Europe experienced, in one of those narratives, in one of his statements, and he was one of the greatest Hasidic rabbis, what did he say? Oh God, please don't tell me why I'm suffering. I don't need to know. Just tell me if I'm suffering for your sake. And if I'm suffering for your sake, that's sufficient. I'm willing to suffer for your name. But not that I sin, only that I'm suffering because you need me to suffer. That's okay. So that's a new theological model that he's stating over there. So one should raise the question again over there, whether or not Yirmiyahu is saying this theologically, comfortingly, that it's not my responsibility, I didn't do anything wrong, I'm saying I'm suffering, or is it inspirational? We'll leave that on the side for a moment. So, Mr. is saying to us that Gemara, of course, has Rabbi Meir saying, Moshe lo ne'ina, that Rabbi Yohanan is saying, in fact, he was answered, and he was answered with this new theological model, or a different theological model. Indeed, the Rambam is saying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu enlightened the eyes of Moshe by teaching Moshe how all of reality is conducted. Tells us, look at Menachim chapter 54, part 1. Omnam amru kol tuvi hu remzar otor anevzeod kulan, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed Moshe all of reality. Kuman, sheyevin metziut olami, understand the existence of my world. Kulo havanat amitit kayemet. If you understand how my whole world works, you understand why this problem of suffering. So the Rambam explains the problem of suffering according to his theological model. And again, you can raise the question whether the Rambam is providing a new model or the old, simply just written differently. It's an interesting question. The Rambam's view of evil is fascinating, where he explains it as evil having no real existence, rather only the privation of good. Analogously, darkness is not real, rather it's the absence of light. It's not real. So there is no real evil in the world according to the Rambam. According to Nebuchim 154. Is that a new theological model, or is that the old written differently? It would seem to be a new theological model the Rambam uses to try to solve the problem of evil. Not for now. So now, Rabbi Soloveitchik is going to quote, Habakkuk taba al bonat hatzedek. Now, who's Habakkuk? One of the three Nevi'im who complained bitterly about a particular phenomenon. Who are the three? You have Zephaniah, Nahum, Habakkuk. Zephaniah was a Navi who prophesied around 620 before the Common Era, who complained about the evil that was inflicted by the Assyrians, Ashur. Horrible evil. Destruction of the 10 northern tribes. Nazism. He complained. Okay. Complained. And of course he predicts that they will be destroyed. Nahum, in 3 chapters, describes, he's the on-the-scenes New York Times reporter, describes the destruction of Nineveh in the year 612 before the Common Era. Nineveh, capital city, Ashur, is now being destroyed. And he writes about it, destruction, which fits well. Evil has to be destroyed, therefore Nineveh was evil, and therefore what's going to happen? They're destroyed, he's describing it. Of course, interestingly, before that is Yonah. Yonah goes to the city of Nineveh, and what does he do? He changes them all around. With what, again? 5 words. Right? 5 words, he changes the entire city of Nineveh, everybody's now righteous, and it all works out well. Temporarily. Now along comes Habakkuk, and he's bitter, he's angry. What is he angry, what is he bitter about? Well, Habakkuk raises the issue, and his chapter 1 is one of the most devastating chapters in all of Navi, condemning, in effect, God himself. In Habakkuk, he raises the issue, Perek Aleph, and it's so devastating we have to change the text. It's one of the Tikkunei Sofrim. Hamasa, the burden that Habakkuk saw. Ad ana Adonai shivati bo tishma. How long should I scream out and you won't listen? Is ak elech, I'll scream out Hamas. There's Hamas in the world, God. You have to do something about it. Where else do we find Hamas? In Noah. And what does God do about Hamas? He destroys the evil people who create Hamas. So I'm telling you, God has Hamas in the world. And then we must destroy them. You're not going to help us? Lama, why tar'eni aven? Why do you make me watch evil? Ve'amal tabit, and you see all of this perversity. There's short Hamas nagdi, and there's pillage and plundering and Hamas in front of me. And you carry this strife in the world. I'm going further, Habuk says. Therefore, tafug Torah. What does tafug Torah mean? Therefore, Torah shall be weak. You want Torah to be the model of righteousness? It's not. There'll never be justice in the world. Because the evil person is now crowning or beating up the righteous person, and therefore there will always be, because of you, God, and he goes on and on. Then he folds his hands, beginning of Perek Bet. Tells HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm going to stand right here, which is what he should have said, which is what he said. He says over here, Emoda, I will stand by my watch. What should it be? Yashiv. What should it be? What he will answer, what I will answer. What should it say in the text? What he will say on what words does he use? Tochachti. What does tocha mean? My rebuke. How does Habakkuk characterize his first speech? It's a rebuke against whom? Against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And yet, this is one, according to the Tanhumah, of course, it's one of the 15 places where the Sofrim changed the text, and rather than say what he said, Ma Yashiv, they changed it to Ma Ashiv. They didn't change that. We don't know the criteria they used for where they changed all of their changes. 2 in the Bible, in the Torah, and 13 or 14 in the rest of the Nevi'im. And Ketuvim. We don't know the criteria what they used. It's one of the mysteries of rabbinic literature. But okay. So Habakkuk raises the tochaha, a rebuke against God, and he's waiting, what is God going to answer my rebuke? And Hashem answers him. Is there anger over here? No. Why not? The question is legitimate. Why is there so much evil in the world? And more specifically, what is bothering Habakkuk? Habakkuk, after all, is seeing something wonderful. What is he seeing that's wonderful? Destruction of Ashur. This makes sense. What's bothering Habakkuk over here? Why is he so upset? Well, what's coming in place of Habakkuk? Bavel. Ashur is destroyed. Bavel. Epsha. It's worse. God, I don't understand you. You are now punishing Ashur appropriately and properly. And therefore, what should happen now? We should have peace and harmony in the world. And who should now be on top of the world? The righteous Jewish people. Instead, you're placing Bavel. What are you doing to me? I can't defend you any longer. I am predicting that God's going to punish evil. So he does so. What does he do? How does he punish evil? Well, he does something even worse. What's worse? Bavel's going to do what? Destroy my temple. I can't live with this. Analogously, to give you the power of Habakkuk, you're a rabbi living in 1942. And you have the obligation of doing what? Of comforting and inspiring and perhaps trying to provide a theological model that's going to absorb and explain the Holocaust or Nazism. And one of your messages is that, look, tell your kahal, God promises He's going to punish the Nazis. And you stand Shabbat after Shabbat saying that Hitler will fall. 41, 42, 43, and 44. Hitler will fall. He'll be destroyed. Now, at a certain point, at a certain point, what's going to happen? People are going to buy it the first year and second year. And they're going to wait for this. Then they're going to hear reports of what's going on over here. Do it already. Jews are dying, God. Why are you waiting? And finally, at 1945, at the end, you're going to end up saying, what's happened? He dies. Commits suicide in a bunker. Wow. So the rabbi walks to shul that Shabbat, and what does he say? See, I told you so. He's smiling broadly. See, God works. At the end of the day, evil is punished. And then, you wait a couple of years, and you find out that who comes in place of Hitler? Stalin. Now, it is so that Hitler was responsible for the death of 20 million people. Anybody know how much Stalin was responsible for? 50, right. I was going to say 50 million. 50 million people. So now you're in Habakkuk's position. Habakkuk, rabbi of that period of time, I don't understand the situation. Yes, Hitler was evil and killed 20 million people. Instead, now Stalin has the power to kill 52 or 50 million people. What is your ways in the world? I need an answer. And what does the rabbi say at that point? What's Habakkuk saying? I don't understand your system, God. You destroyed Ashur. Fine, wonderful, well. Now Babyl's on top of that? I have a question. He has the question. So he says it. I have a question. Here, as opposed to Yirmiyahu, which of course took place later, Hashem answers him. Ani Hashem v'yomer k'tov hazon. Write a vision. K'tov hazon. Write a vision. U'be'er al ruchot, and explain this vision on large tablets. How are they large? L'man yerutz koreh bo. So that a person who's running can read it. I want a billboard. Here's your answer. And he answers him and says, Hi'od hazon la'mo'ed. There's still going to be a vision in the future. Meaning that even though now you don't understand what I'm doing, even though now, right now, there's so many questions in your mind, there's still another vision. Wait. And the end, the future will come. And I'm not Yechazev, I'm not lying, I'm not disposing. It's going to happen. Im yitmahma hakelo. If he delays, wait for him. Because God says, Ki bo yavo lo yahed, he shall in fact come. Referring to the Redeemer, Mashiach, solution to the problem. So in effect, what is Hashem telling Habakkuk? Patience. Right. It's going to happen. I guarantee, I'm putting my credibility on the line, God says, that I will solve this problem of evil in the world. But you have to wait. There is a vision that you don't have it. You don't have the whole picture of reality. You have a small slice. Ashur, Bavel, small slice. There's a greater, broader picture that you have to appreciate, Habakkuk. Now, of course, we have to, not now, but one has to study, analyze. Is Habakkuk satisfied with this new theological model, or old theological model? That God is simply saying, just wait, if he delays, he shall come, ki bo yavo lo ya'acher. He won't delay. He'll be here. There's an end to history wherein everything will work out well. There'll be redemption. God says, God promises, buy it. Okay? Habakkuk. Vasalvechik. So, Habakkuk taba elbon hatzedek. Habakkuk asked regarding the question of righteousness in the world. Yirmiyahu. We spoke of Yirmiyahu. David b'tehilotav. Kohelet. Yeshvu al maduchazu. All have thought about this terrible problem. Sefer Iyov kulo mukdash zu. The whole entire book of Iyov is all dedicated to this perplexity. Adikat yamim ta'anat sod. This ancient of problems, this secret teaching over here, shadayin hi mirachef bulamenu. It is still mirachefet, floating in our world. Mirachefet. It's a beautiful word, mirachefet. What does it bring to mind? Why does Rabbi Soloveitchik use this? Bereshit. Right. Why would Rabbi Soloveitchik use the word from Bereshit over here? It's a primeval issue, going back to really creation. Baked into the fabric of creation is the problem of evil. And of course, Bereshit concludes with Kitov. So Merahevet, floating in our world, is still this issue. The Toba'at seeks out et pi'anuha, the secret. Why does God allow evil to rule over His creation? That's the question. So let's just begin by talking about the hidden mystery of evil, and therefore it's an old problem. Now, Mr. Vechik goes on and continues. Hayadut v'hatara lehof l'tahim. Judaism in seeking its haven of refuge, ba'olam, shasua is divided, v'utad is cut, al yedei yisurei kiyum, by the afflictions of life, of living, of existence. V'kasha ma'anan, it seeks out an answer, lehidat pilaim shel tevel hasholek, to the puzzle, the wondrous puzzle, mystery of evil suffering that rules. Superficially. Ra'it ayin. It seems to be shilton b'li mesarim. The evil seems to rule over without any boundaries. Now, writing in the aftermath of the Holocaust, is this statement questionable? No. It seems to be b'li mesarim. This is evil. Higia lideh nisua hadash. Now Rabbi Soloveitchik says, this has now come to a new formulation. Hagdara hadasha. And a new definition. Something new is happening over here. He's come to a new formulation and is in need or has a new definition. Sheyesh bahem min harhava amaka gam yachad, which has in this new formulation definition an expansion and a deepening of the problem together. So Rabbi Soloveitchik is saying over here that it's not the old problem writ again. There's something new and different over here that is an expansion of the old problem and a deepening understanding of the old problem. Hamadat she'ela sevel, raising the question of suffering, to'enet hayadut, Judaism asserts, if sharit hi v'shteh dimansiyot, two separate dimensions. How we approach the problem of evil, he says, can be approached with two aspects or two dimensions to it. Michael, moral, v'yehud, fate and destiny. Now again, you could raise the question, did any other Jewish thinker, biblical or rabbinic, ever oppose the problem of evil with these two dimensions, namely fate and destiny? So far, no. I don't know of any. Okay, now wait a second. Is that a biblical concept or that's his imposition of his categories on the Bible? Torah does not in fact tell us about Yud Goral, but rather, what's its intent? Is the intent over there to speak about fate and destiny? Or is it a brilliant turn of a phrase that he's using to buttress his position? I agree that it's very good.
It sounds like situation and explaining it in a more philosophically...
Okay, my question to you would be, is had you not had this essay in front of you, and you read this Pasukim, would you have ever dreamed this Pasuk is dealing with Goral and Yod? Or are you only thinking that because he said it first? Okay, so Pshat is that which is in the Pasuk usually. And it's reasonable as a scientific criteria to say that we could all repeat it, we could all know of this before he even said it. But nobody ever did. So, I hear what you're saying, and with Rabbi Soloveitchik, his readings of text are so brilliant, the line is so fine, that you're never really quite certain is he reading into it, or is that the Pshuto Shel Mikra. Same thing when you read The Lonely Man of Faith, you read his understanding of Bereshit Aleph and Bet. Nobody ever read or wrote or thought about this new view of Bereshit Aleph and Bet, and yet, it's new. Is it he reading into it and therefore Dirash? Or is it what the Torah really intended that for 2 or 3 thousand nobody ever said? Is it Pshat or Dirash? Is it exegesis or eisegesis is the question. And I'm willing to certainly admit that it's Pshat. Because of who he is. He sees it as Pshat. Although nobody Jewish ever, with thousands of Talmidei Chachamim and thinkers and writers, nobody ever said what he said regarding either Goral Azel or Bereshit Aleph and Bet. But I think it's Pshat too. But I think it's, I'm a thin ice when I say it, but I do believe it's Pshat. But that might be loyalty to him, and who knows what else is involved in that statement. So, but I would see it as I'm on the thin line of deciding that issue. I'm torn between those two issues. Let's leave it for now. Okay. So Rabbi Soloveitchik is going to say that we're going to now frame this age-old problem with two new dimensions, two new categories, called fate and destiny. Yadut Hibhina Tamid. Judaism always has distinguished between Kiyum Gorali, the Kiyum Yehudi, between living a life of faith, and I'll define in a moment what that means, and living a life of destiny. Ben Ha'ani Yelid HaGoral, Laha'ani Ben HaYehud, to the I. But Soloveitchik as an existentialist goes back to the individual person who's suffering. And he's going to approach that person who's suffering and going to ask that person, are you a person of fate or of destiny? What does he mean by that question? What's the fundamental undercurrent of what he's talking about over here? One time, Bobby. Okay, good. So the man of Goral is crushed by the tragedy, by the crisis, and cannot move. He's immobilized by the philosophizing, thinking, why me? How me? How do I understand that? And therefore never goes one step further, is Isha Goral. Isha Yehud, as I'll describe in the next paragraph, is somebody else who's going to say, even though I don't understand and I cannot put into any kind of coherent theological framework that makes sense, still know what am I going to do? I'm going through. I'm taking another step. It's that person who chooses to live life fully, completely, and totally, even though they've suffered a crushing defeat. That is inexplicable. He remains with a question mark as to the problem of evil. He won't solve the problem of evil. Not care. Does not allow himself to philosophize ad infinitum / ad nauseum, and rather simply says, Ad kan v'lo yoter, I'm now going to live life. What should the Jewish people do at this point? They were faced at 1950, 51, 52. You were crushed by the Holocaust. And now you're still struggling for existence. So now we could raise the question, is the covenant still in effect? Yes or no? Does God still love us? Yes or no? 6 million Jews died, probably doesn't love us. 1.5 million babies thrown into a fire, probably doesn't love us. And you could struggle. No, he does love us, but there's a reason, so we don't know the reason for this. And you could back and forth and not live life fully. And what is he saying over here? Obviously that point is going to come out to down the road. He's going to talk about A, that one must live life even though one does not understand fully what happened. At all. And then he will try to provide Eov as a possible model. Eov down below in chapter 2 will provide a possible model for some semblance of a solution. In the beginning it's and at all, correct. But as he goes into Eov, he's going to say that Eov learned something through his suffering. There's a quasi-explanation for Eov's life of tribulation. So we'll get to that if we have time later on. Interesting, of course, is your model was expressed by Richard Rubinstein, one of the foremost of Holocaust theologians, that in fact said that we have to go on, and we're now going to create a new God in order to believe in, which he called the land of Israel. He said, I'm really a pagan. We all have to be pagans. Go deify the land of Israel, and that will celebrate that, and we'll be Jews on the land of Israel, and that's what we have to do, because there can't be a God of history any longer. And of course, he was challenged by Michael Wissegrad and Irving Greenberg and other people with creating that new Wiccan theological model, right? And he was challenged by saying that, therefore, you've placed at the center of your theology destruction. And Jews can never survive that way. You've placed the center, the model you have. What's your model? What are you building? What's your theological model? Chorban. So you're being Yehud, but you're doing it through Chorban. And rather, Irving Greenberg and Michael Wissegrad and others would say to him, you can't do that. That's a death knell. Rather, your model still has to be Yetziat Mitzrayim. God is a God who redeems. Hashem took us out of Egypt. That was a horrible, evil situation that we lived in, and now God took us out. That's our model. Gamze Ya'avor. And we have to fight through towards our destiny, but with our theological model always being Yetziat Mitzrayim. That is the genius and the beauty and the wonder of Tanakh. Yetziat Mitzrayim is a theological model through which we see the entire world. Yetziat Mitzrayim, not Chorban. First of all, there are multiple approaches. First, we'll say there are multiple approaches to this, is what we're saying. There are multiple theological models. The same spot is where we want to get, which is survival. Because we're not willing to accept death and defeat, despite destruction. Although Richard Rubinstein did. He's accepting death and defeat, saying it's a whole new relationship to God. There's no God. And those Jews who at the Chorban Bayit Sheni said Christianity had another theological model. So obviously, Sovejic, myself, and all of those others are not willing to accept that. Now, you may not be able to assimilate and utilize our theological model, and therefore you need another one. But I would only allow you that if you're asking me the question as a temporary safe haven. You need it now to deny. My model would be Onan. Onan is the person who cannot say a beracha. The person suffers a devastating death in the family. What happens? He's not allowed to say a beracha. Don't address God at all. Don't do any mitzvot aseh. So eat without saying a beracha. For somebody to say beracha for 40 years, it's amazing. So that might be a temporary model. Suspension as opposed to denial. Your first point was about denial. Think was about suspension. We'd be willing to entertain suspension. Although I'd feel more comfortable if I were able to find a biblical rabbinic model for suspension. I'm not sure. I have to think about that and look through that to see if there is that. That's an important point. But going ahead, that Yehud would demand for me to do, I must go ahead, but it has to be through the old theological model. Because we are Jews that have a continuous Jewish history for 3,000 years. But the person who had gone through it, the person who was through the Shoah, who went through the Holocaust, to whom Rabbi Soloveitchik is addressing this essay, needs something. He needs to fit into his religious outlook something at this point in time. To tell him simply, wait, trust me, which worked for Habakkuk. You're saying 2 centuries. Intellectually, on a logical, rational basis, of course you're right. The Jews needed something at this point in time. But Soloveitchik wrote this article, which again is interesting, is that's unique that, could you think of any other Gadol Hador that wrote something similar to this? Trying to explain. They're all saying, Tzaddik L'Torah Yahyeh, I'm using my model of Habakkuk, you have to have faith, and that's it. In the famous formulation of one rabbi that I once had, he said that those who believe have no questions. Exactly. So now I didn't buy that then, 30 years ago. That wasn't an appropriate answer. I needed this. And many needed this essay, this article, to provide something theologically new or old, new formulation that's going to be able to give me some understanding. Comfort, yes. Inspiration, yes. New theological model, perhaps. But it worked. It worked for many people saying, I don't have the answer, but I could live with the question. Can you live with the question? If I told the person, wait 200 years and you'll find your answer, he may not have been able to live with that question for 200 years. Although you're right, logically, still no, he needed this. I think on one level of awareness of intellection or other, at some point, most people raise the question. There is a book, if you want to pursue this, called Faith and Doubt of Holocaust Survivors, which addresses this issue. And whereas you said the Holocaust that you had met, it's a limited cross-section. Eliezer Berkowitz, of course, deals with this question in the beginning of the Faith of the Holocaust. Eli Wiesel is that person who was raised as a Hasidic Jew, Hasidic and Sighet, as a Hungarian Satmar Jew. At the end, his whole entire faith world was shattered by this. We don't know this is a view. Maybe they became thinkers because of the Holocaust. Having to try to justify, rationalize, theodicize what took place. So the answer to your question is that it needs much more careful study. And again, this book is only one attempt at that, trying to analyze faith and doubt of Holocaust survivors. Who really questioned? What was their background? The Hasidic Jew did not question, perhaps. Some did. The secular Jew didn't question because it confirmed him in his atheism. And that middle group who became religious because of the Holocaust, who were secular, and those who the opposite became irreligious because of the Holocaust, who were religious at first, like Wiesel. We don't know. So your question is well taken, but it has to be analyzed, and one has to read all these works in order to come to a sociological, psychological understanding as to who fell in what camp at what point. Let's go a little bit further. Third paragraph tells us and defines for us something that we've already known, that we've already discussed. What does it mean, kiyum gorali, ketzad? What does it mean for a person to be a victim of fate? Zeu kiyum meunat, a forced existence. Hinat ankoracha ata hay. Meaning that you have no choice in the matter. Just live life. Do no choice of your own. Kiyum obadti. Shaluv. Your life is a forced life that is tied to a chain. A links of chain. Mechanit. What does mechanic mean? Mechanical. Mechanistic. It's mechanical. Exactly that. In other words, you just simply are strewn as a leaf with the wind. That is kiyum gorali. Netulat mashma'ut. Without meaning, no meaning. Kivun tachlit. There's no meaning, there's no direction, there's no purpose to your life. Umesh'ubad. You are enslaved to the powers around you. Shtuchan ithaf hayachid. By which the individual is blown away. By the providence without even taking you into account. You're mechanically living. You are pushed into being blown to all places. Demut object. You are only an object. There's no I-ness to you any longer. Demut object la ani hagorali. You are simply an object subject to the forces of nature. And you have no individuality by which you're going to strive for. As an object, you are now appearing as asur. You are made and not somebody who is an oseh. Oseh is active, asui is passive. So here he's saying to you that the man of faith is simply allowing himself to be pushed and blown by the forces at large around him, with no will, no strength, no desire to take a step forward. Asui hu al yedeh hitnagshuto hasidilit. You are made by virtue of the contact, of the causal contact you've had, imahutz, with outside world, the objective outside world, kehefetz lumat hayvet, as one object to another object. As the wind blows the leaf, you are blown by the forces of nature. You do nothing to try to change direction. Nikla, you are caught. Ani agurali, the ani agurali is caught. Bekaf dynamica atuma, a closed dynamic. Shukula mufnit lebad, closed to the outside, to anything that's outside. Jutor nebucha, your existence is confused. There's no internal sense to that person. Atmiyut ve'atmut. There's no independence and there's no I-ness to that person. The ani agurali, that faithful I, machish, denies et atzmo kehusha gemura, denies the essence of that person, because the I-ness of the person cannot be sustained. Because the I-ness of as a subject and the I-ness as an object cannot both coexist in the same context at all. The I-ness of doing and the being an object cannot both coexist. So now what do you do? So what does he want of you? He does not want you to be only an object. Isha Goral is a man who is only an object, subject to the whims of fate. And he wants you to be what you said second of all. Yes, we all actually do shift from one to the other. That's true. But he wants you now to, at this point in time, to shift to the active, participating person who's now going to be the doer rather than the object of what is done to him. Next paragraph describes that. On this background, Safa ve'oleh rises and floats evil in all of its terror. There are two pathways, the existence in the faithful existence. A priori, the man whose object, Asur, is bound in the chains of existence without any choice of his own. He stands confused. Any person that suffers this massive loss is now first confused. What do I do now? Can't turn. He stands confused and overwhelmed by the mystery which is called suffering. Faith laughs at him. His existence is torn apart. What do I do now to survive? It self-contradicts, denies your whole life is now viewed as valueless and meaningless, denied by the faith. Machisha denies the value, and its worth and importance. The fear of destruction attacks him, and destroys his body and his soul and his psychology. There's nothing left inside that person that's able to now stand strong and go ahead. Wandering is the person who suffers in the emptiness in the void of the world. Destruction. Can't read the word. Elohim, Elokit. Perusa alav. Divine destruction is now over that person. Aleha, Perusa aleha. On his life. The Haronapo and divine anger, Matuach Nigdah, is now facing that person's life. Ve'kulo, and all he does, muhrad, trembling, murgaz, confused, emotionally trembling. What do I do now? So as it goes on, just to summarize some of these points, it's saying that that person of Goral cannot function whatsoever. Now, paragraph 5, after Azut ha-fizikit, after that physical trembling experience, psychic, right, psychological, good, psychic, good. After that trembling immobilization of the personality, as his first reaction, ha'intellectualit. Now comes intellectual insight. With some kind of time comes intellectual insight, ha'hoteret, that delves into havanat ha'kiyum, to understanding existence, or hizuk batihoto, and a strengthening with the security, with hono and trust of the person. I've now gone through my overwhelming experience. What do I do now? I'm confused and perplexed. But after that, now I take a step back for this person of Goral. This is still a Goral person. And now I'm going to attempt to use my ani to do what? To understand the evil that has perplexed me. Now I'm going to understand it. At this point, the man begins to do what? To understand evil. And to ask very difficult, serious questions about all of this. Page 2. He now is going to investigate for the foundation, intellectual foundations of evil in the world. He's going to go the whole 9 yards now, intellectually. He's already been shaken psychologically. But now I can understand even if I'm going to survive because I understand evil. And now he's going to try to find shalva, harmonia, peace and harmony, which is positive and negative, and to remove the sting of the tension between the thesis, which is good, and the antithesis, which is evil. I'm now going to be able to live life harmoniously and tranquilly. Question: is he going to be able to do this? Answer: no. Even with all of your intellectualization, intellectual is going to come to that point that you can't do it. Intellectual is not going to solve your problem. Why is Rabbi saying this? What is his angle over here? He wants to go beyond the categories after psychic confusion and intellectualization of the event. He wants to get you to another place of trying to deal with suffering, not psychologically and not intellectually, with action. Only action is that which eventually is going to solve your problem. The ani will remain immobilized by the confusion, but surpassed. Now intellectualism, immobilization, then the action itself is what's going to make you a shaper of your destiny, and that's the only hope you have. Yeah, well, he's asur if he's psychologically confused and asui. He's asur by being asui. That's correct. Right. But now he's trying to break out of that. He's now trying to break out of that mold. And he's trying to be an osir. I want to understand all this. But he's telling you now that you won't understand it. This won't do it for you. And if it won't do it for you, then what should I do? You have to become ish hayi'ot to solve the problem. What's important over here is not how you were born or where you were born, but what you do with what you were given. To be the oseh, exactly what he's saying. You're born as an asui. But the person that survives his point is the person that survives has the obligation of being an oseh. Let me just go one more point over here. So he says that the person is going to try to find the harmony between the thesis and antithesis. The man comes to a metaphysical understanding of evil. He's now able to compromise with that evil. He's going to try to cover it up. Cover the evil. He's going to use Michael, his intellectualism, in order to do what? Intellectually, whatever God has given him, until he's able to rule over individually. Deny it. I deny evil. That's the Rambam. Deny this of evil. Yes. The next paragraph, one more minute. But Judaism, with its a realistic approach, and man and his stance in reality, Hevina, understood, the Rambam wants to cover it up. The intellectual wants to cover it up. But Judaism with its realistic approach is not going to allow you to cover it up. Evil is not given over to erasure or covering it up. And all of the attempts to lessen irkam shel hanigud, to lessen the value of the nigud, the contrast, v'apilug, nigud, the opposite, v'abilug, and the pilug tearing apart in existence, it will not bring you to any kind of tranquility and harmony of the soul. ha-existentiale. Right, it took me 20 minutes to do that one. And will not bring you to understand the secret of existence. Hara hu uvda she'en achasha. Evil is there and it cannot be denied. Yesh no ra. There is evil in the world. Yesh no sevel yeshna misure she'or v'tofet ba'olam. There is suffering in the world and there is the afflictions, a hell-like afflictions in the world. Now, mi shirotze, if you want to fool yourself, if you want to fool yourself to that small, by ignoring all of this, it won't work. By romanticizing man's life, it won't work eventually. Eventually, you'll be confronted by the evil. And therefore, Vasavechik, and we'll end with this, in the next 2 paragraphs, tells you that the man of Gorah will not ultimately create a worldview, but rather he says that the man of Ye'ud, which we've already discussed, the man who's able to rise above the suffering that he's experiencing and positively see the world to create, is the man who is the true Jewish personality. Jewish people now suffer the Holocaust. His answer over here to you is to not deny the Holocaust. It happened. And not try to intellectualize it. You can't do so. And try to rise above the psychic confusion that's going to attack you. In order to do what? Build the land of Israel. This is a classic Zionistic essay by his coming down the way, 10 pages into this, by saying that the only answer you have to evil is by doing, is by building, and this was his clarion call, wherein he says that God has given us the opportunity by knocking on the door 6 times, based on Shir HaShirim, by knocking on the door 6 times, and now we have to answer the knock. Shesh tefekot, 6 times. You answer the knock by responding to Hashem's call, which is go ahead and politically and militarily and theologically all now rising above the evil of the Holocaust without understanding in order to build Eretz Israel. So his answer to this entire problem of evil is not solving it, but rather rising above it and trying to build Eretz Israel. God willing, we should all see Simchat Yerushalayim, and we should all take the lessons that we learned to heart. Baruch Hashem, amen.